features his uncle King George for Walt Disney. So check it out. Anything links at redlineentertainment.com. Saturday, July 15th of 2024, the day that somebody tried to shoot former President Donald Trump as he was on the stage in Pennsylvania. So I was up early that morning anyway, and I started my day kind of earlier than usual, and he got to Pumpkin Place, and so then when Lauren got up, she had to go off and run some errands. So I was sitting there. I brought my computer into my dining room where I needed to get work done on it. So I was sitting there, no TV on, no news whatsoever. Sitting there in front of my computer, just totally absorbed in all this HTML code and all this stuff that takes a lot of concentration. And as I was working, all of a sudden, boom, it was like a light bulb hit me, and I instantly knew somebody is going to try to assassinate Donald Trump, and I had a flash in my mind of what this looked like. Okay. And I had not been thinking at all about this, but it was so strong, I immediately stopped what I was doing. I picked up my phone, and there it was, boom. It was breaking news. This had just happened. And telling you, talk about it, do anything. Because I know I could never prove to you that that's true, but why would I make that up? And I felt this enormous shockwave in the force when that happened. And so, again, this is one of those things that I know transcends politics. It's just about the state of the world in general. But I tell you this because, to me, this is just one other piece of personal proof that psychic phenomena, ESP, whatever you want to call it, exists, and that we are all connected in some way, and that sometimes earth-shattering things happen, and even though you're not directly involved or anything nearby, you can feel some kind of a ripple happen. And the last time something similar to that happened, I guess, was when I guess Hitler shot Ronald Reagan back in 1981. And I was a little kid, I happened to be watching television when that happened. So, maybe that always kind of stuck with me, that I saw that play out, and so maybe I'm just more sensitive to those types of things. Again, proof of psychic phenomena, and if you experience something like that, feel free to contact me and tell me about it. You can email me through my website, joshuapwarren.com. Just scroll down to the bottom and you'll find the information. Something else I want to share with you that I was very excited to see, sort of a confirmation of something that I've been talking about for many years. Here's this one source. CNN has reported scientists confirm first lunar cave that can help shelter astronauts from the moon's extreme temperatures. Now, if you may not realize this, but I have quite an interesting history with talking about things that used to be considered moon conspiracies. And that's because that, long story short, when I was a young man, I was an apprentice of a former NASA Hall of Fame engineer named Charles A. Yost. I helped him with projects in his laboratory in Western North Carolina. And one day, Charles Yost said, I want to show you something. And he set me down in his office and he played for me this very bizarre footage he had taken from one of the Apollo missions, in which the astronauts are flying over the surface of the moon, and they captured what looked like some kind of a giant black smokestack sticking out of the surface of the moon. And then as the camera is passing over it, the smokestack appears to release like a little puff of smoke. And I said, what is that? He said, that's a good question, you tell me. He was one of the guys who actually engineered the spacecraft, and he was involved in every step of the moon landings. And he could not explain what is the stuff on the surface of the moon that is rare that we know about or talk about. And if you would like to see this footage, let me tell you how you can see it. Go to joshuapwarren.com, and you'll see in the menu at the top of the section that says Gallery of the Strange. There's a lot of good stuff there, but scroll down to the section that says a smokestack on the moon, question mark, and click that and you can watch this footage. He gave me permission to post that on the internet for the first time. And I went on posting a backlash from, there were people out there who were just coming after me, trying to tear me to pieces, saying, no, there's nothing on the moon, this is ridiculous, you're spreading misinformation. It was almost suspicious. Like there was an orchestrated group out there trying to immediately squash any discussion of weird stuff in my life. And then, of course, I became friends with Jim Marrs, and he wrote this fantastic book called Alien Agenda. And Alien Agenda, he talked about how the moon is much greener than we know, that it seems to be largely hollow, that it rings like a bell when a meteor strikes it, that also there seems to be some atmosphere on the moon. Scientists back then were like, no, that's impossible. Even if there were a smokestack on the moon, there's no atmosphere, and so it couldn't release a puff of smoke that drifts. Guess what? After the years of life, little by little, everything that Jim Marrs said about the moon has come true. Everything he wrote about, there is a slight atmosphere on the moon. There are examples of water vapors on the moon. There's ice on the moon. And you have people like Richard C. Hoagland who It says scientists have long theorized the existence of lunar caves, underground passageways formed through volcanic processes that are connected to the pits covering the moon's surface. Now a team of international researchers has found the first direct evidence that the moon's deepest moon pit connects to a cave that can provide shelter to astronauts. Let me just point out something right off the bat. This article says scientists have long theorized the existence of lunar caves. Bull! Okay, back in the day when crazy fringe people like myself or Jim Mars were talking about, or you know, I don't know which, but the people like that were talking about the possible existence of these structures on the moon. It was all the scientists then they were saying, no, this is all conspiracy, this is fringe, this is wacko stuff. But as soon as they're ready to discuss it, oh, we've known this for a long time. They go on to say that this is going to help as humans go back to the moon and explore more. When you hear how big this thing is, okay, it says they collected all this data from this lunar reconnaissance orbiter, and they found that this thing is an underground. There's a great picture. Okay, so the cave measures 148 feet wide. That's 45 meters. Between 30 and 80 meters long. That's 98 and 262 feet long. It's huge. Okay, when we come back, I have a story to tell you, okay? I'm Joshua P. Warren. You're listening to Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. And I will be right back.
Children
Death Star from Star Wars. We're going to find out that it's some kind of an ancient construct. And this article that just came out about the caves has a quote from a scientist, quote, "The caves are a unique environment that preserves the history of the moon," end quote. This is from Lorenzo Bruzzone, a telecommunications professor. And he said, quote, "The analysis of rocks inside the caves could enable new discoveries related to lunar evolution." Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so, yeah, they're talking about, oh, we have a shelter here. Well, you know, maybe, yeah, other beings have found shelter there as well. And it's getting harder and harder to keep secrets like that now that we've become such a globalized technological society. There are various countries that can go up to the moon. And it's harder than ever to keep a lid on the reality that the moon may have some signs of being an artificial construct that may even still contain, if not life, the remnants, you know, like fossils of life that was once there, that would rewrite our history of the cosmos. So just, once again, let me remind you, the scientists who have been belittling a lot of us who have been saying that we think there's evidence for this are now having to come around and take credit for, oh no, we knew that, we hypothesized this all along. That kind of stuff. It chafes me a little bit because I've seen it happen far too long, over and over again. You know what? Speaking of space-oriented things, I think I want to end the show by telling you what, I don't know, it's kind of a funny story. And I say this because that I told this to Lauren the other day. I'm not even sure I'd ever brought this up before. But, you know, sometimes I do a segment on the show I just call Mental Manna, where I just tell you some story that I think maybe you'll find it kind of interesting or humorous or whatever. And recently I talked on this show about my experiences hanging out with Scott Gruenwald when we were both cast members for an entire season. You know, we were stars on this TV show on the Travel Channel called Paranormal Paparazzi, and how that during the times when we were filming stuff and kind of like the studio stuff in New York City, he and I would hang out a lot, almost every day. And the funny story is that I mentioned that Scott liked to smoke a lot, and that was his, you know, his big thing. He was always on the sidewalk sucking out a cigarette, and he would ask me to step out and join him a lot. And I am not a smoker, but you know, I will, in cases like that, I'll step out with a buddy and smoke a cigarette if that's going to help him out. So we were on the in a very, I think we were pretty much right there around like Times Square, you know, very, very popular area. And so he and I are just standing there, and this lady who's quite scantily clad came walking up to the two of us and asked Scott for a light. And Scott was a very sociable person, so he didn't hesitate to provide a light. And then, I don't know, they strike up a conversation, and she said, "So what do you guys do?" or something like that. And Scott was very proud, and he said, "Oh, we're big stars. We work for the Travel Channel on a TV show produced by Zach Bagans called Paranormal Paparazzi. And we've been traveling all over the place, investigating stories." And she goes, "Oh, okay." And so I said, "So what do you do?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm a hooker." And so we just went, "Oh, okay." And she's very nonchalant. And then she said, "So what are some of the things that you've been investigating for this show recently?" And I believe I said, "Well, I just got back from Texas, where they've had a lot of UFO sightings down there, and you know, we met with this sheriff who videotaped some stuff." And the lady, she kind of shakes her head. She goes, "Well, you know, Werner Braun and Jack Parsons, They were working with NASA and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, creating all of these advanced versions of the V2 rocket that probably includes some kind of zero-point energy. And Scott and I are just like standing there watching this woman just come up with the most obscure, like precise encyclopedic knowledge about like the history of ufology and all of this other and we were just blown away. I mean, like she was articulate enough and knowledgeable enough that I could have easily sat down and interviewed her on a show. So we talked to her for like 10 minutes, and after that we're like, whoa, man, can you believe that she knew this and this and this? So after that, from time to time, we'd be outside, and sure enough, we would hear she come walking up in our direction, and we'd be like, oh, here comes the Mensa hooker. And she would come up and just, every time it was like some kind of profound, conversation about some kind of paranormal thing or, some weirdo thing. And that was just a funny thing. Like he and I would joke about, the Mensa hooker that we met, who was like this super paranormal expert. I wonder what happened to her. I'll never know. Let me see if I can squeeze in one more quick funny story that this just occurred to me for the first time in years the other day, and I told Lauren this, and she thought this was funny. When I was a kid, it was a big deal when my mom and dad bought me my own color TV to go into my bedroom. And so, of course, they wanted me in bed at a certain time every night, and so I was always a night owl, and I would wake up, or I would just stay up. And after they were asleep, I would very quietly turn on my TV and watch late night stuff like The Night Gallery with Rod Serling, or some of these old Hammer films that were on. And back in those days, you also had these advertisements, these commercials for 1-900 numbers that you can call to have a naughty conversation. Well, I knew you would never call those numbers because you would get a phone bill. But then for a while, they would have 1-800 numbers that were free, and they would use that to bait you, and then they would try to get you to switch over to the 900 thing. So anyway, one night, late at night, sitting there by myself, and they come up with this 1-800 number, and I go, you know what? I want to see what this is about. I'm curious. So I call the number. And here's this pre-recorded voice. Hey, baby, you're looking for a good time tonight. Yeah, that kind of stuff. And I'm just listening to this recording, and all of a sudden, there's a click. And then a real live woman comes on and starts talking to me. And it freaked me out. So I immediately hung up the phone, and I got into bed, and I was like, that was weird. And then like 1 minute later, the phone rang. This is 2 o'clock in the morning. Everybody's asleep. The woman called me back. know that I was responsible for whatever that woman said to her at 2 o'clock in the morning. I wonder what it was. Okay, now let's end the show on a positive note. Here is the Good Fortune Tone. That's it for this edition of the show. Follow me on Twitter at Joshua P. Warren. Plus, visit joshuapwarren.com to sign up for my free e-newsletter to receive a free instant gift, and check out the cool stuff in the Curiosity Shop, all at joshuapwarren.com. I have a fun one lined up for you next time, I promise. So please tell all your friends to subscribe to this show and to always remember the golden rule. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your interest and support. Thank you for staying curious. And I will talk to you again soon. You've been listening to Strange Things on the iHeartRadio Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network.
Well, if you like this episode of Strange Things, wait till you hear the next one. Thank you for listening to the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network.
Food brings people together, but for many families, figuring out where their next meal is coming from is a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Harvest of Hope Fair to benefit Utah Food Bank's middle school childhood hunger programs. Participating is easy. Now through the month of November, simply purchase an item or prepackaged bag of food at any Macy's store or online. You can donate any amount and all proceeds will go to Utah Food Bank. Together, we can make a difference in our communities.
No matter what kind of car you drive, two things are always true. All tires eventually need replacing and all vehicles need servicing. Luckily for you, Big O Tires is an expert in both. They have all the name brand tires you trust for any vehicle on any road condition. They'll keep your vehicle running smooth with expert services on things like alignment, shocks, struts, batteries, brakes, and more. Get into your locally owned Big O Tires. People you trust.
The leaves are falling, there's a chill in the air, and it's the perfect time to curl up inside with a new book. LitJoy is more than a fully customizable quarterly book box subscription. It's your destination for special edition books and book lovers' treasures. From beautifully illustrated and signed book copies to themed book ends and drinkware, LitJoy has everything you need to tackle your to-read pile this fall. Visit litjoycrate.com today. LitJoy, where the love of books comes to life.
Sometimes when right crime took place leads you to answer why the crime happened in the first place. Hi, I'm Sloan Glass, host of the new true crime podcast, American Homicide. In this series, we'll examine some of the country's most infamous and mysterious murders and learn how the location of the crime becomes a character in the story. Listen to American Homicide on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
From Audio Up, the creators of Stephen King's Strawberry Spring, comes The Unborn, a shocking true story. One woman, two lives, and a secret she would kill to protect.
She went crazy and shot and killed all the farm animals. Slaughtered them in front of the kids. Tried to burn their house down.
Listen to The Unborn on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Water damage is no joke. Did you know that water damage makes up more than 25% of all home insurance claims, and the average claim costs over $13,000? Don't let a small leak turn into a big expense. Learn more at go.pemco.com/no-joke. Pemco Mutual Insurance Company, Seattle, Washington. Mexico is calling, and non-stop flights from PSC to LAX on Alaska Airlines make it easier to reach. From LAX, connect to 8 destinations in Mexico, like Cabo San Lucas, Puerto Vallarta, or Guadalajara. Whether it's for work, to visit family, or to get a little me time, fly with Alaska. We have the most non-stop flights from the west coast to Mexico, plus your favorite food and beverages on board. So fly non-stop from Tri-Cities Airport to LAX and on to Mexico. Book now at alaskaair.com.
How did Ella make her way to the top? It all started with one smart decision. She test drove a certified used truck from her local Ford dealer. It was inspected, backed by a Ford warranty, and a better budget. A Carfax report was the cherry on top. Soon, a pinch of confidence became a truckload of ambition. Cupcakes became customers. Customers became regulars. Turns out, Ella's next great investment was herself. Ford Blue Advantage. Used car buying that's built for you. See dealer for full program and limited warranty details.
Welcome to the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. Now get ready for Strange Things with Joshua P. Warren.
Welcome to our podcast. Please be aware the thoughts and opinions expressed by the host are their thoughts and opinions only and do not reflect those of iHeartMedia, iHeartRadio, Coast to Coast AM, employees of Premier Networks, or their sponsors and associates. We would like to encourage you to do your own research and discover the subject matter for yourself.
exercises and experiments you can do at home, and a lot more on this edition of the show. You are living in a sea of this hidden spy tech. And maybe you know about this already, but this was something new to me, brand new to me. And it's actually quite cool, but also kind of spooky, as is the case with all new powerful technologies. And before I get directly into it, I want to maybe sort of compare it to some other things that I have seen in my life. I love that movie, Muppet Christmas Carol. And I think at some point Ebenezer Scrooge says, if you want to know the measure of a man, you simply count his friends. And as a matter of fact, Charles Darwin said something similar. A man's friendships are one of the best measures of his worth. Well, in that case, I, Mr. Joshua P. Warren, am a very wealthy man because I have a lot of friends all over the world. Despite the fact that I can actually be quite a grumpy and pessimistic person sometimes. And I know you may find that hard to believe since I'm always talking about being positive and such, but that is why. I've said that you're not likely to solve a problem unless you personally have it. And so I've worked hard throughout my life to try to transform negative thinking into positive thinking and faith. And that's why I started experimenting so many years ago with self-help and self-transformation and manifestation literature, because I wanted to shift my way of thinking about the world. And then when something actually worked for me, I was so excited that I wanted to share it with others. And I think that has been a big part of my destiny. Creating these products, it's been a good business because people thank me and they say what works for me also works for them. It's all good karma. And as they say, a rising tide raises all boats. So I'm very, very fortunate to have so much support around the world. And my point is that when you have a lot of friends, sometimes you get to do special things. You get some, shall we say, like backstage VIP tours, that kind of stuff, behind the scenes. And sometimes it might just be a concert or something like that, but occasionally I get invited to privately go to some technical labs that are off limits to most people. And many years ago, I was allowed to take a very special personal VIP tour of a top secret facility here in the U.S. that creates various tools for the Pentagon. And of course I had to get security clearance and all that. And it was one of the most amazing days of my life. I got to tour something, I can't be too specific, but in the James Bond movies when they take him into the lab with, I guess it's Q, and they're showing him all the new gadgets, and they're just people sitting around in cubicles, making all these amazing little inventions for him. That's exactly what it reminded me of. And so, as I was walking around in this facility, at one point, one of the head honchos there, he took me into a room where they test things. Sort of like they would be used in a field. They had obstacles and all kinds of odd stuff like that. And he took out this device that was about the size of a deck of cards. And told me that little box was worth more than my house. And it had just been created at that time. And essentially this was such a powerful type of thermal imaging unit that it could, in many cases, literally see through walls. So that is to say, if you had a person in a house somewhere and you had this little box, you would be able to look at the screen and you'd be able to see what the person was in the house. It was sensitive enough to pick up the heat signature through the wall, and it was just mind-boggling. And since then, I've always been very interested in things that allow high-tech offices of the government to look inside your house. And I know that this is especially handy when you have some type of a hostage situation. And in fact, I know years ago that I started hearing that the government was using the Wi-Fi signal inside of a house in order to be able to see what's inside the house and see the people who are moving around. And that makes perfect sense because your Wi-Fi signal, I guess, to my understanding, it's kind of like a radar signal. So, when you have this Wi-Fi signal broadcasting throughout your house, as it sends that signal out, anything that blocks it is going to show up if you have the right kind of tools. Because with radar, you have a transmitter that sends out a pulse of electromagnetic radio waves. And then the target there is an object in the path of the waves that can reflect them back to the radar, similar to an echo. And then the radar has this thing called a receiver that captures the reflected energy and measures how long it took to return after the transmission. So I think what they're doing with Wi-Fi is something similar to that. In fact, I'm looking at an article right now that was published last year in Popular Mechanics. And this article is called "Scientists Can Now Use Wi-Fi to See Through People's Walls." And the author here, Tim Newcomb, says researchers at Carnegie Mellon University can map human bodies through walls using Wi-Fi. He says it isn't immediately clear how using a Wi-Fi signal to track human movement through walls improves personal security, but that's what they're claiming. And so I'm familiar with all this kind of stuff. The idea that there has been technology around for a long time that will allow you to essentially see what's happening behind private walls. And you might say, well, but that's okay because there has to be a warrant issued and that kind of thing. But the problem is technology always falls in the wrong hands because criminals, they can get access to the same stuff that the good guys have. We know that this happens all the time. And so this next thing is something that, okay, the point that I'm making here, the big topic that I'm going to dig into is something that not only I'd never heard of before, but it also kind of makes me think about some other metaphysical issues that might give us deeper insight into the nature of reality itself. So this is not easy for me to talk about in a podcast. I'm going to do my best. There is this YouTube channel called Tom Scott. I don't know who Tom Scott is, but he seems to be, like a technical adventurer. He's got a lot of subscribers, 6.4 million people subscribe, and he has these well-produced videos about technology. And one of them is called "The Hidden Background Noise That Can Catch Criminals." And it may have been Mobius who first sent this to me. And so he explained that obviously it is easy for you to forget as you live your day-to-day life in this day and age that we are surrounded by electrical wires. And I'm not just talking about the wires in your walls and in your devices. I mean the big ones, the big wires that are all overhead, running throughout every city. You kind of tune them out because they're so ubiquitous. The huge transformers and the huge power lines, sometimes they're underground, most of the time they're above ground. And you are wandering around every day in this huge three-dimensional field of electromagnetism that is produced by all these wires. So you can almost think of it as if you are a fish and you are walking through or swimming through the water, and you don't even realize that you're in the water because the water is invisible. It's just like a medium that's all around you. You don't even think about it. But in this case, instead of it being a fish with water, it's you wandering through this sea, this three-dimensional sea of electromagnetic waves that are produced by the current running through these wires. And here in the U.S., a typical AC line produces 60 hertz. It means every second it pulses 60 times. And I think in parts of Europe it's 50 hertz. It varies a little bit. But these lines are supposed to have sort of a consistent rate. When we come back from this break, I'm going to tell you how that scientists are now using information coming from those wires that's getting picked up on every recording that you make that can be used to determine where you were and at what time the recording was made. And this has a lot of implications for anything you put on the internet. And also, like I say, I think it ties some into metaphysics as well. Before we hit this break, I have at least one more big announcement I am going to be making this year, and that's 2024. And so if you want to be the first to know about it, go to joshuapwarren.com, sign up for my free e-newsletter right there on the homepage. Takes you 2 seconds. Put your email address in there, hit the submit button, and you will receive an automated email from me with all kinds of links to free online digital goodies, a good luck charm, something to help you start making more money. I call it a money miracle secret. All that and more. Go to joshuapwarren.com. There's no period after the P. Be sure to check out the Curiosity Shop there. Buy something cool. Support the show. And then on the homepage, that's where you'll find the e-newsletter subscription. I'm Joshua P. Warren. You're listening to Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. And I will be right back.
Hey folks, we need your music. Hey, it's producer Tom at Coast to Coast AM, and every first Sunday of the month, we play music from emerging artists just like you. If you're a musician or a singer and have recorded music you'd like to submit, it's very easy. Just go to coasttocoastam.com, click the emerging artist banner in the carousel, follow the instructions, and we just might play your music on the air. Go now to coasttocoastam.com to send us your recording. That's coasttocoastam.com.
How do you stay ahead when you're building AI applications? Start with a head start. IBM's high-performance Granite models are optimized for enterprise tasks, like domain-specific processes and workflows. They're designed so you can do less training and more creating. Ready to hit the ground running? Get started now at ibm.com/granite. IBM. Let's create.
Crumble is one of the
mission to serve up the best desserts in the world. Every week, their rotating menu brings a mouth-watering lineup of treats, from rich, delicious cookies to light, fluffy cakes, making sure there's something everyone will love. But the fun doesn't stop there. With new flavors launching every Monday, your next favorite dessert is always just around the corner. Ready to get in on the delicious action? Download the Crumble app today to stay up to date on all the sweet details and treat yourself to something truly special today.
Hey, it's Producer Tom, and you're right where you need to be. This is the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast
the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. I am your host, the Wizard of Weird, Joshua P. Warren, beaming into your wormhole brain from my studio in Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada, where every day is golden and every night is silver. Agitato Zume. That's the magic word. Use it whenever you need a little extra zing in your day. And also, have you seen the new Electrum wand yet? If not, check this thing out. It is amazing. Electrum is spelled E-L-E-C-T-R-U-M. Go to electrumshop.com, electrumshop.com. It's incredible to think about how much power there is all around us that is essentially invisible, or at least it is to humans. We just tune things out. So going back to this topic that's so fascinating, you right now have all of these electrical wires around you producing these signals that you don't even think about. And when you make a recording, whether it's as long as there's some audio there at least, and actually I'm not certain. I'm not going to pretend I know all the ins and outs of this. It may be possible that you can also detect something just with video without audio, but especially if you have audio. If you release, let's say you record some little video of yourself at your house and you don't want anybody to know where you live, and then you put this video out there on the internet, it is possible now that someone can figure out where you are and even what time you recorded this, because there is this barely detectable little hum on that recording that has its own sort of fingerprint. And that is because that all of these wires around you, yes, they may be pulsing at 60 hertz or 50 hertz as a general guideline, but it's not 100% consistent. There are all these little tiny shifts, and so that means that every single second there is a unique little hum that can be detected in the background that can be matched up with what that power line was producing at that time. This is called technically a mains hum. And in fact, I don't want to get too technical here, but it says here, this is a sound associated with alternating current, which is twice the frequency of the mains electricity. Because of the presence of mains current and mains powered audio equipment, as well as ubiquitous AC electromagnetic fields from nearby appliances and wiring, this electrical noise can get into audio systems and is heard as mains hums from their speakers. Mains hum may also be heard coming from powerful electric power grid equipment, such as utility transformers. This is onboard aircraft or spacecraft. The frequency heard is often higher pitched due to the use of 400 hertz AC power. Okay, so there is this unique sound that can be detected to determine where you were and at what time something was recorded if you have a database that you can compare it with. And so the point that this guy was making in this video, called the hidden background noise that can catch criminals, is that he went out and interviewed these forensic scientists, and they say they've already used this in court cases to determine the accurate time when something was recorded. They can go back and they can access 7, 8, 9, 10 years of data from a power company that pretty much produces what looks like a chart or a graph that shows this specific pattern. It kind of reminds you of what an oscilloscope line looks like. And then you take the recording that you get from the audio of, say, the video clip, and you put both of them into a computer, and the computer analyzes it and finds the spot where they match up. And by finding the spot, so you already have to have, I guess, some kind of an idea where the location may be to know where to go to the power company to get the data to compare. That could be a pretty broad area. But as long as you had access to that power data, then you can take that and you can plug it into a computer along with the recording, and boom, it can find that watermark and say, this is exactly the electrical signal that was coming from the wiring at this location at this time when this recording was made. Therefore, this is when and where it happens, and know exactly where you live and exactly what time you recorded whatever you recorded. And again, it's like they're claiming that this is still sort of in its infancy, that there's still a lot of work to be done. But now that AI is being introduced, work is being achieved at a much, much faster rate. I watched a documentary on Netflix just last night, and they had taken a book that a man wrote. The guy, I think he's dead now. They took a book that he wrote, and then they took a video that he did one time, which was an on-camera interview, and they just used AI to change the way his lips moved and the way his words were put together, so that it looks like he's sitting there reading from his book and speaking the words from his mouth that he wrote in the book. What that means is that any book that I've ever written in my entire life, for example, someone could now take and combine that with a video of me sitting there on camera talking about anything you can imagine, my secret recipe for lasagna, and match my face and my lips up with the AI voice, so that now, instead of me talking about lasagna, I'm sitting there reading my book to you, or I am stating what I wrote in the book on camera. We're very, very quickly moving in this direction. So AI, what's going to happen when we start applying AI to this and see that if anything you put on the internet has the potential now to reveal your location and the time, and what does that say about your privacy? Because again, you might say, well, hey, if you have nothing to hide, right? Why do you care if the government does this? Fine. But what happens when the people who want to rob you do this? They tested this. In this video, this guy said, I want to test this out. He found a bunch of his friends who are content creators and producers of various kinds. They sent him clips, various random clips from them doing some YouTube video. He sends it to one of these forensic experts who did the comparison, turned right around, and was able to tell him every single time exactly when and where that was recorded. and even detect an edit that was in them. And you know, this type of mains hum phenomenon, I mean, it's been around, it's been known forever. In fact, I was reading here, John Lennon had some issues in the late 70s. Of course, one of the Beatles there, John Lennon, recorded some demo songs at his and Yoko Ono's Dakota apartment, and they did not get any official release at the time, and they weren't even properly being recorded. And in the mid-1990s, as a part of the Beatles anthology series, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, they regrouped to record initially incidental music for the albums, but decided to rework some of John Lennon's demos instead, and they had problems with the hum because he was not using appropriate equipment, and they had to go in and get some new technology to kind of go in and manage that hum. So this is something that's been around since, I guess, to some degree, the beginning of recording systems. But the ability now to go in and forensically identify this, I mean, that's pretty astounding, really. And where is this leading? Where are we going to be in 10 years? Is it going to be possible to do anything without giving away your identity and in ways that you can't even think about? It almost seems like a new form of DNA, that you may be putting all these recordings out there right now, and just because you wipe the data off of it, you say, well, nobody's ever going to be able to figure out where I live or whatever. But that's like people who committed murders years ago and thought they were going to get away with it because they didn't know they were leaving DNA behind. And now they're getting caught. So it's kind of like a new form of DNA. And it reminds me of that quote from the Bible. I guess it was Luke chapter 8, verse 17. Jesus says, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad." In other words, nothing is hidden, nor anything secret that will not be known and come to light. So it's like everything is being recorded, and we don't even know. How embarrassing is this going to be if we find out that every moment of our lives are being put into some form of a gigantic recording device? This is what reality is. We're talking about something similar to the Akashic record. And it reminds me, there was some comedian who, I forget who, said something like, maybe if people commit a murder and get away with it, that should be fine. It might have been Jack Handy. That sounds like a deep thought by Jack Handy. If you commit a murder and get away with it, I think that should be okay. I don't know. When we come back, though, I'm going to tell you what I think this may be showing us about something like the Akashic record. And then wait till you hear what happened to me the other day on the internet. I am Joshua P. Warren, and you're listening to Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. And I will be back after these important messages.
The Art Bell Vault never disappoints. Classic audio at your fingertips. Go now to coasttocoastam.com for full details.
You're listening to the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network with the best shows that explore the paranormal, supernatural, and the unexplained. You can enjoy all shows on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
My name is Mark Robbins, president of ParanormalDate.com. Over 5 years ago, George Norrie approached me with a unique concept, a dating site for people searching for someone with interests in UFOs, ghosts, Bigfoot, conspiracy theories, and the paranormal. From that, ParanormalDate.com was born. It's a unique site for unique people, and it's free to join to look around. If you want to upgrade and enjoy more of our great features, use promo code GEORGE for a great discount. So check it out. You got nothing to lose. ParanormalDate.com.
iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. I'm your host, Joshua P. Warren, and this is the show where the unusual becomes usual. There are people of all ages who listen to this show. And I realize, you could be in your 20s and you were born in the year 2000. If you're born in 2001 or born in 2002, a grown person, you can drive, you can drink alcohol, you can buy guns, you can do everything. And to you, it probably sounds kind of old when you think of somebody being born in the 1900s. I was born in 1976, so to me, even the 1800s don't sound like that long ago to me. In the 1800s, they discovered dinosaur bones. Like, scientists acknowledged that dinosaur bones were real. Before then, they didn't have any knowledge of dinosaurs, supposedly. They discovered the mountain gorilla in the 1800s. Technology is changing at an amazing rate. As a matter of fact, the oldest woman alive, oldest person alive, Maria Ranias Morera of Spain. She's 117, and she was born in 1907. That's not too long after the 1800s. 100 years ago, there were people who were still riding horses in much of this country. Getting old is so annoying, though, isn't it? It's like I'll be 48 this year, and so you start having old age issues. Like, for example, a lot of times I'll go to a bar or a restaurant, and my tailbone will hurt sitting on these wooden chairs. And so, what do we always do? Eventually, you get on your phone. You're like, "Well, what's wrong with me? Go get medical advice. Why does my tailbone hurt?" And AI pops up and says, tailbone pain can have many causes, including sitting for long periods of time, sitting on hard or narrow surfaces, poor posture, repetitive motion, and age. Wah, wah, wah. Age? Well, what do I do about that one? That's why that you really should not go online sometimes and look up problems, because what's my problem? It'll scare you to death. I asked some medical question one time on the internet, and it said, if you go to the bathroom and do a number 2 and it stinks, you may have a serious problem. And I said, oh no, it does stink when I do that. I'm not even joking here. Here's what I'm getting at, though. Technology is advancing at an insane speed. And therefore, I know it's easy for us to say, well, you don't need all this privacy. You should be an open book. Let's just put cameras everywhere. Let's put all your information into computers that everybody can access. Let's show everybody where you are at all time. And a lot of people do that anyway. They get online and they post, here I am right now. I'm live streaming. Look at where I am. I'm not at home. And I feel like that, people are voluntarily giving away too much privacy. It's kind of like the genie that you can't put back in the bottle. But what if it is futile? What if there actually is something similar to an Akashic record, that every single thing you do is somehow being recorded or is recordable? And because you are immortal and you're actually, maybe like you're going to die in this life, but your spirit will live on, I believe. And at some point, you're going to have to look back and account for all of the things that you did that you didn't, like when you didn't know anybody was watching. Oh, there was a camera there. So it also makes me wonder if this has a connection to ghostly phenomena. It's part of this matrix, part of this recording process. That sometimes you are being recorded in the environment in ways that you don't understand, and then other people are able to see that recording or experience that recording. I've often thought it might be similar to RFID chips. You know, there are some RFID chips that have a little battery and they send out a signal. But a lot of them are passive. They don't have any signal whatsoever. They just sit there like a little dead coil of wire with a chip. Like, let's say you go to a store and you find some pair of pants or whatever that you're thinking about stealing. And so it's got a little tag on it, which is a passive RFID chip, and the tag's not doing anything. But as you walk out the door, it gets hit with this electromagnetic beam that suddenly wakes it up, and then it starts communicating the signal back, and the alarm goes off. What if everything that you do is creating some type of an impression on the environment, even if it's a passive one? And then sometimes a certain person comes along and shines his or her consciousness upon that space by simply observing it and thinking about it, and it wakes up those little passive memories, and they activate, and for a moment they come back, and you get to see what was recorded there. You get to see the ghost, the imprint, the residual there. Well, look, the show's called Strange Things. I'm allowed to make leaps like this and take you down these rabbit holes. And also, I think that, you know, we honestly do have to be concerned about what AI is going to start doing to us. Something happened to me the other day that's never happened to me before. I have been on Facebook since December of 2008. That's around 16 years. As a matter of fact, Mobius set up my Facebook page for me originally because I didn't care about it. And now, you know, I use it on a pretty regular basis. And I don't think I've ever, in the past 16 years, posted one thing that gave me an alert from Facebook. I've never been in what they call Facebook jail, where they lock up your account and suspend you. I've never had any of that happen. The first incident happened to me, well, it was yesterday, actually, as I record this. I went to Facebook, and I did a screen capture of this, and I tried to post a link to my personal bug out bag. Now, a bug out bag is something that you keep that's got a bunch of survival gear in it. If there's something like a natural disaster or another emergency and you have to flee your house within seconds, it's a bag you can grab. It's got a lot of essential stuff in it that will help you. And as a matter of fact, I did a whole show about the bug out bag that I have. It was episode 75 of this podcast called Strange Things. And that show is called What's in My Bug Out Bag? And MK Ultra Mind Control. So, for example, at my bug out bag, I have a list of everything I have in it. I'm looking at it right now. And I literally have fit all of this into one backpack. I'm not going to go over it right now. You need to place your bag in an area where you can grab it quickly, heading out the door without thinking. It should be camouflaged in case you need to hide it. And you also want to have something like some pepper spray, because if somebody's going to try to steal your stuff, you need to be able to defend it. So it's got like toilet paper, a loud whistle, alcohol wipes, some chapstick, some nail clippers, some Neosporin, a towel, emergency candles, eye drops, and a lot of stuff you just won't think of, and I thought about it for you. And if you want to look at my list of what's in my bug out bag and use this to help you put yours together, go to joshuapwarren.com, click the link to the Curiosity Shop, and scroll down to where it just says bug out bag, and you can click that, and it shows you the list of what I have, as well as, of course, my Sunshine Simple Solar Generator. So I went on to Facebook, and here's what I wrote. The rest of this year is going to be a roller coaster, and not always in a good way. Please prepare. Here are some of the most important things I keep in my personal bug out survival kit. That's all I wrote. There was nothing political about that. There was nothing specific about it. Because we know every year there are hurricanes, there are tornadoes, there are floods, there are wildfires, earthquakes. Okay, so all I said, the rest of this year is going to be a roller coaster, not always in a good way. Please prepare. And then I put a link to my bug out bag list. And instantly, I got this automated message back from Facebook, and it said, "We removed your post." Why this happened? Here's their explanation. It looks like you tried to do